First and foremost, I want to ask you a very simple question. How are you all feeling today? And I mean it literally. I would love for you all to share with your neighbor how you're feeling right now today. All right, if I could rein you back in, I would like you all to raise your hand if you heard your neighbor say good or fine. Okay, I see quite a few hands. Well, let me tell you something. Good and fine are not emotions. Now, your neighbor is not a liar. It's just that they might not be ready to be totally emotionally authentic with you. And what I want to talk to you about today is something that's very special to me, and that's emotional authenticity. Now, art and emotions go hand in hand. They're both shared human experiences, and emotions are our little daily creations, and they're meant to be shared, but they're meant to be shared in a way that's very specific. So what I'd like to do first is to define authenticity. What is it? Is it this big, lofty, thoughtful, provoking thing? It's really not. It's very simple. All that I ask you to do is to be honest and to be empathetic and to walk right down the middle, because that's where we find authenticity. And so instead of me telling you all about how to be authentic, I'm going to let the great artists of our past generations be our guide to emotional authenticity. So there are two types of emotions I would like you to be thinking about as I'm speaking. First and foremost, we have reactive emotions. That's the emotions I'm feeling right now. They bubble up to the surface. It's nervousness, it's fear, it's happiness, it's joy, it's sadness. These are the ones we feel immediately. The next ones I'd like you to think about a little more carefully are our interactive emotions. Now, interactive emotions, they conspire against us. They create the context for reactive emotions, and they require deep inner dialogue and reflection in order to understand. So, for every one reactive emotion, there are usually about 5 or more interactive emotions at play. So maybe for your one experience of sadness, there could be 5 different emotions that are bubbling beneath the surface that are just begging you to feel them and to feel them deeply. So the first thing and the first step toward emotional authenticity is we need to feel honestly. And this is something that artists do a wonderful job at. And so I'm going to show you a few examples of what it really looks like to be honest with your emotions. First, we have The Old Guitarists by Pablo Picasso. We see a man, he's contorted, he's sad, he's blue. The only thing that isn't blue about this man is his guitar. It is art that is what is keeping him afloat, keeping him from fully folding into himself. The Scream by Edvard Munch. Edvard Munch was sending a warning out to everybody, saying that World War I was coming. He was feeling despair, hopelessness, and he was feeling afraid. And that scream, as it gets pulled into the background of the painting, is a cry out for help for everybody around him. We see In the Garden by Claude Monet. Now we get to see Monet as this observer peeking over and getting to watch somebody enjoy curiosity, spring, and joy. So what can we learn from these painters and these pieces of art? Just the same way that all of their emotions leap off of the canvas and into our hearts and minds. We too are that canvas. We are the art. We can allow our emotions to jump right out of us, and we need to feel them and feel them honestly. Now, the second thing that artists do very successfully, and the second step toward emotional authenticity, is to create authentically. Now, what it looks like to be an authentic creator is to feel first for yourself, but when you create, think not just about yourself, but how will I translate this so that my audience understands what I'm feeling? And I'm going to show you 2 examples. One is going to be a reactive, and the other is going to be interactive. First, we have Defacement, the death of Jean-Michel Basquiat. Well, it's by Jean-Michel Basquiat, but it's about the death of his friend Michael Stewart. And we see himself represented in the center as this death figure because Michael Stewart was killed in a police brutality incident. And we see Jean-Michel grappling with his grief, We see him representing himself as the angel of death, surrounded by the chaos. And we see him trapped between the fame and the fortune that art brought him. But we also see him trapped with the linger of death and knowing that he saw himself in Michael Stewart's death. He's unifying us in his grief. How beautiful to be able to do that, to take a reactive emotion and to unify an audience in it. We have The Broken Column by Frida Kahlo. Now, what we see in her is we see nails piercing her skin. We see a broken spine that's a column, but it's still holding her up despite it being totally broken. We see tears streaming down her face, but her expression is brave, it's bold, it's courageous. And we see her alone in the desert, fearless. And what can we learn from this? We learn that our deep, sad emotions can also be brave emotions. She is allowing her emotions to interact and to have deep dialogue within herself. We see her trapped between, the feelings of being hospitalized and bedridden, but also the hope that she found in herself and her art. And so what can we learn about these authentic creators is that when we create something, we have to think not just about ourselves, but we have to translate our feelings so that an audience can understand what we're feeling. Now, the third and most important thing that all creators must do is express empathetically. Now, what does this mean? This means that when we share, we should only share for our audience. Now, this could be an audience of one, it could be billions, but it doesn't matter. You always have to share thinking about what your audience will feel. And no one does this better than Vincent Van Gogh with the irises. You might be thinking, what can these flowers tell us about empathy? They tell us everything. We see one white lonely flower off to the side. That's Vincent. He saw himself in that one white lonely flower in the field. He painted this while he was in the asylum. One of the most renowned artists of all time died penniless. And in saying, "I am lonely," he gave us permission to do the same. He gave us permission to feel our loneliness and to express it in a way that is beautiful, easy to understand, and empathetic to an audience. Billions have been able to see this beautiful piece of work, and he has touched so many people, and so can we. So I implore you, going forth, to do three things: to feel for yourself, to create for yourself, but also for your audience, and to share only for an audience using empathy as your guide. And it's not going to be easy. Emotions are difficult to share, but just as Vincent was for us, you too can be a light in somebody else's stormy night. When you share your truest emotions, your truest feelings, you are being an example to somebody else. You are giving somebody else that permission to do the same thing. And so I implore you to share a little, to cry a little, to smile a little, but very carefully, and most importantly, to ask yourself, how do you feel? Thank you.